Canadian Indigenous Studies is a vast and vital field. It's about more than just history. It's about understanding the present and shaping the future. We must acknowledge the systemic racism and discrimination faced by Indigenous peoples. But it's also about celebrating the resilience, knowledge and cultures of Indigenous communities. Why is this understanding crucial? Because it challenges us to rethink our assumptions. It disrupts the dominant narratives that have shaped our understanding of this land. By delving into Indigenous perspectives, we gain a richer understanding of Canada itself. We begin to see the world through a different lens. This lens allows us to appreciate the values of reciprocity, respect, and responsibility. It's about building a more just and equitable society for everyone.
Indigenous worldviews are rooted in a deep connection to the land. They see the world as a web of relationships. Everything is interconnected: humans, animals, plants, the earth, and the cosmos. Spirituality is integral to Indigenous worldviews. It's about living in a good way, respecting all creation, and honoring the sacredness of the natural world.
Oral traditions are the lifeblood of Indigenous cultures, a vital thread that weaves through the fabric of their existence. They are more than just stories. They are living histories passed down through generations, carrying the essence of the people. These traditions serve as a vital means of preserving knowledge, values and beliefs, ensuring that the wisdom of the ancestors is never lost. Imagine sitting around a flickering fire, the air thick with anticipation, as the night sky blankets the gathering in a sense of unity. An elder begins to speak, their voice weaving tales of creation, of heroes and tricksters, of lessons learned and wisdom earned, each word a thread in the tapestry of their culture. These stories are not mere entertainment, they are teachings disguised as narratives, imparting crucial life lessons and cultural values. They carry within them the history of the people, their connection to the land, their understanding of the natural world, and their place within it. The power of oral tradition lies in its ability to connect the past, present, and future, creating a continuous thread of cultural continuity. It instills a sense of identity and belonging, grounding individuals in their heritage and community. It reminds listeners of their place within the grand tapestry of their people's history, a history rich with resilience and strength. Despite attempts to silence Indigenous voices, oral traditions have survived, standing as a testament to the enduring spirit of the people. They remain a powerful force in the revitalization and affirmation of Indigenous cultures today, ensuring that the legacy of the ancestors continues to thrive.
Indigenous arts, crafts and languages are far more than aesthetic expressions. They are tangible representations of cultural identity, embodying the histories, beliefs and values of their creators. Each piece tells a story, whispers a prayer, or carries a song on the wind. Consider the intricate beadwork on a pair of moccasins. Each stitch, each carefully chosen color speaks to a specific clan, a family history, or a connection to the land. Similarly, Indigenous languages are not merely tools for communication, but vessels of cultural knowledge. Despite the impacts of colonization, Indigenous artists, craftspeople and language keepers are working tirelessly to revitalize and preserve these essential elements of their heritage. Their efforts ensure that future generations can connect with their cultural identity.
Section 5. Treaties, Promises and Betrayals. Treaties hold a complex and often fraught place in the relationship between Indigenous peoples and the Canadian government. They represent agreements made between sovereign nations, intended to establish a framework for peaceful coexistence and the sharing of land and resources. However, the history of treaty-making in Canada is marred by broken promises, misunderstandings, and a fundamental power imbalance. Indigenous peoples believed they were entering into agreements of shared use and ongoing relationship. The Canadian government, however, interpreted these treaties as a means of extinguishing Indigenous title to the land, paving the way for settlement and resource extraction. The impact of broken treaty promises has been devastating for Indigenous communities. The legacy of these broken promises continues to cast a long shadow on relations between Indigenous peoples and the Canadian government.
Section 6. The Long Road to Recognition, Indigenous Rights in Canada. The journey towards recognizing Indigenous rights in Canada has been long and arduous, marked by legal battles, political activism, and a growing awareness of the injustices faced by Indigenous peoples. This journey has involved countless efforts from Indigenous communities to assert their rights and preserve their cultural heritage. From the early days of colonization, Indigenous peoples have resisted the erosion of their inherent rights. Their resilience and determination have been a testament to their enduring spirit and commitment to justice. The Constitution Act, 1982, marked a significant turning point. It was a moment of hope and a step towards rectifying historical wrongs. It recognized and affirmed existing Aboriginal and treaty rights, providing a legal foundation for future advancements. This recognition paved the way for landmark legal decisions, such as the Sparrow case, which established a duty on the government to consult and accommodate Indigenous peoples when their rights are impacted. This case set a precedent for future legal battles and negotiations. While progress has been made, the struggle for full recognition and implementation of Indigenous rights continues. The path forward is still fraught with challenges and requires ongoing vigilance and advocacy. Issues such as land claims, resource sharing, and self-governance remain at the forefront of Indigenous political agendas. These issues are crucial for the future well-being and autonomy of Indigenous communities across Canada.
Section 7. Truth and Reconciliation, a Path Forward. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, active from 2008 to 2015, marked a pivotal moment in Canada's journey towards reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. This commission was a response to the long-standing injustices faced by Indigenous communities. The TRC's mandate was to uncover the truth about the residential school system and its lasting impacts on survivors, families, and communities. It aimed to document the experiences of those affected and to educate the broader public. Through the heartbreaking testimonies of survivors, the TRC exposed the horrific abuses inflicted upon Indigenous children in these institutions. These stories were a crucial part of understanding the depth of the trauma inflicted. The TRC issued 94 calls to action, urging all levels of government and Canadian society to address the legacy of residential schools and advance reconciliation with Indigenous peoples. These calls are a roadmap for meaningful change. These calls cover a wide range of issues, including education, health, justice, language revitalization, and economic development. They emphasize the need for systemic changes to support Indigenous communities. The TRC's work has been instrumental in raising awareness about the ongoing impacts of colonization and the importance of reconciliation. It has laid the foundation for a more inclusive and just society.
Section 8. The fight continues. Land rights and sovereignty. Land rights and sovereignty remain at the forefront of Indigenous struggles in Canada. For Indigenous peoples, the land is not merely a resource to be exploited, but the source of their identity, spirituality, and cultural survival. Many Indigenous communities are asserting their inherent rights to their traditional territories. They are challenging resource extraction projects, demanding a say in land use decisions, and seeking to reclaim their rightful place as stewards of the land. The recognition of Indigenous title, as affirmed in legal decisions like the Silcotin case, represents a significant step towards reconciliation. Indigenous peoples are also advocating for greater self-governance and self-determination. The path towards reconciliation requires recognizing Indigenous peoples' inherent right to govern themselves and manage their own lands and resources.
Section 9. Closing the Gap, Health, Education and Social Justice. The legacy of colonization continues to have a profound impact on the social, economic and health outcomes of Indigenous peoples in Canada. Systemic racism and discrimination have resulted in significant disparities in areas such as health, education, housing and employment. Indigenous peoples experience higher rates of chronic diseases, lower life expectancies and poorer access to quality healthcare. Similarly, Indigenous students face significant barriers in education. Addressing these disparities requires a commitment to social justice and equity. This includes investing in Indigenous-led health and education initiatives, addressing the root causes of poverty and discrimination, and creating opportunities for economic development and self-sufficiency. Section 10. Conclusion: Building a Better Future Together. Understanding Canadian Indigenous Studies is not just about learning about the past, it's about shaping a more just and equitable future. It requires acknowledging the painful history of colonization and its ongoing impacts on Indigenous peoples. It demands that we listen to Indigenous voices, respect their knowledge systems, and support their self-determination. By embracing Indigenous perspectives, we enrich our understanding of Canada's history, present, and future. Reconciliation is an ongoing journey, not a destination. By working together, we can build a future where Indigenous knowledge and cultures are celebrated, where treaties are honoured, and where all Canadians have the opportunity to reach their full potential.